Kill slide 45, she said without even glancing in my direction. Looks like haunted spreadsheet art. The laser pointer was still twitching on the screen when the first laugh slipped out. Then another one louder this time, from some eager junior PM hoping to impress. Just like that, my slide, titled Vendor Risk Onboarding Timeline, was gone. Poof. Weeks of regulatory cross-checks, clause reconciliation, and layered compliance matrices? Erased in seconds because Talia Knox, our shiny new chief optics officer, yes, that's what she called herself, decided it was bad for momentum. I didn't react. Didn't push back. Just shut my laptop a bit slower than usual and quietly ran my finger over one square in my personal copy. The red one. The one no one ever asked about. I'd updated it recently after combing through the latest vendor onboarding regulation. Nothing flashy. No bouncy graphs or dancing pie charts. Just a single square. Sitting there. Quiet. Alive. Like a pressure vein waiting for the wall to burst. And hey, 97% of people listen to stories like this without ever hitting like or subscribe. If you're enjoying the ride, show some love. Keeps the caffeine flowing, and that keeps the stories coming. Now back to it. Nobody liked the Matrix. Too cluttered. Hard to follow. Such a buzzkill. Someone once said it looked like a Sudoku board put together by a madman. But the truth about Risk? Doesn't care how it looks. It doesn't care if it ruins your dopamine-fueled pitch deck. Risk just sits there. Silent. Watching. Kind of like I do. That red square? It marked the activation point for Clause Delta 14. Buried deep in a federal framework nobody else had bothered to read. It had gone live 2 weeks earlier and came with a $750,000 non-compliance fine if not flagged before rollout. The clause was tucked away in Appendix G, page 197, part of a Friday night update blast. The kind of thing only a nerd like me reads. So when Talia laughed it off, Talia, who came from some glossy payment app and treated federal compliance like astrology, that wasn't just clueless. That was reckless. Still, she smiled her perfect PR smile and kept clicking. Wiped my section. Cut the matrix. Said we needed sparkle and speed, not doomsday walls. Everyone nodded. Me? I sat there. Press blazer poker face. Typed one last note into the changelog and quietly BCC'd myself the full version history. They never wonder why I sit in the far corner. Why I bring my own printer paper. Why I carry a second USB stick on my keychain. They just figure I'm boring. Uptight. Invisible. But someone's gotta be the dam holding back the flood. That matrix wasn't just a table. It was the only clue tied to that clause. And now? It was gone from the official deck. Talia was already working her press angles. The founders were all grins. Engineers were joking about beer bets. No one asked why I had flagged that red square before letting them delete it. Or why I didn't speak up. But they'd find out. Because the clause didn't care about wow. It only cared if risk code Delta 14 was acknowledged. And it wasn't. Talia Knox breezed into the room like she had NASDAQ dust on her shoulders, waving around a gleaming metal tumbler and wearing a smile sharp enough to slash payroll. Her heels looked like they'd never touched pavement, and her blazer was so fitted it could have strangled humility. All right, people, she said, chipper and commanding. Let's make this pitch sparkle. We're not selling fear, we're selling the future. She didn't even bother sitting down. Just paced around the table like a shark in a startup tank, flipping through slides on the shared screen faster than anyone could follow. Love that one. Ditch slide 12. Merge 20 through 25. Move that graphic up. And, oh my god. She froze. Slide 45. My matrix. She tilted her head, narrowed her eyes like she was staring at something offensive in a museum. What even is this? She said, already half laughing. Is this from a horror film? Does the monster pop out at Red Square 15? People laughed. Of course they did. Kyle from DevOps did his signature hyena laugh. Even Sarah from Finance cracked a grin behind her coffee mug. I opened my mouth to explain the matrix. The colors. The dates. The flow of vendor onboarding. The penalty triggers. But Talia waved me off with a polished hand like she was dismissing a fly. Callie, sweetie, I love the effort. Really. But we're aiming for clean visuals, not dropping compliance grenades in the middle of a pitch. I tried to say just one thing. The red square links to Yeah, I'm sure it matters somewhere, she interrupted, launching into full motivational speaker mode. But for this audience, it's overkill. We need speed, not speed bumps. Kill the slide. Next. I clenched my jaw so tight I felt it in my temples. Then I moved my hand. Click. Matrix gone. And again I said nothing. She flashed a triumphant grin like she'd just saved us all. Keep it light, folks. We're here to wow, not worry. Next slide. And just like that, they followed her. Every single one of them. Chasing her buzzwords like ducks behind confetti. I minimized the shared screen and pulled up a folder I prepared for moments exactly like this. Pitch prep _ backup _ 7. Blinked back at me. Timestamped, mirrored, fully archived. I dropped the Matrix version into a new zip and emailed it to myself with 2 tags. Matrix rebuild. Clause Delta 14. I didn't push back. Didn't lecture the room about SLA deadlines. Didn't explain how the clause she just mocked carried a legal punch strong enough to flatten us. I just sat there, lockjaw, counting the beats in my neck. She thought she'd scored a win. What she actually did was delete the only documented reference to a federal integration trigger, one that, if ignored, would slam us with a $750,000 fine and a 30-day audit. But Talia didn't care. All she saw was a scary red square on a slide that didn't bounce. All I saw was a countdown clock speeding up. The next morning, I sat staring at the updated pitch deck like I was reading my own eulogy. The Matrix? Gone. Vendor timelines? Gone. Any trace of code Delta 14 or the checkpoints I'd mapped to the new federal SLA. Completely scrubbed. In their place, a looping animation of our so-called growth flywheel. A bold new slide titled Risk-Free Scaling in 90 Days. Risk-free. Sure. The file name was screaming in desperation. Final _ approved PDF. And if you've worked in tech long enough, you already know what that means. Half the team hates it, the rest are too burned out to care, and someone's already sending it off to the printer. As for Talia, she was busy rehearsing her lines like it was opening night at TEDx, tossing around buzzwords like agility, seamlessness, and my personal favorite, audit resilient. She didn't send it to me for review. Didn't CC me on the final send. So I logged into the shared server. Pulled up the last saved version, my version. Found slide 45. Clicked export as PDF. Saved it under a quiet name. Q4 Arch Recap. Nobody ever opens archive folders. Then I opened her final deck and ran a side-by-side comparison. My matrix? Wiped. Clause references in the speaker notes? Gone. Footnotes linking to the compliance folder? Removed. I didn't say a damn thing. Instead, I flipped back to my original matrix, moved the cursor to square 14D. Yeah, the one Talia had mocked as a jump scare, and hovered there until the tooltip appeared. Delta 14 non-compliance trigger, $750,000 penalty, auto audit within 30 days of violation. I took a screenshot, opened a blank email, attached the original file, pasted the image right in the body, and typed exactly this. Original deck. Slide 45. Clause Delta 14. Time of deletion. 3:41 p.m. EST requesting log retention per SOP. Blind copied it to legal. Not because I thought they'd spring into action, far from it. I just needed the timestamp. A breadcrumb. Something the auditors could dig up later when they came sniffing around with polite smiles and clipboards asking, "So where exactly was the risk mitigation plan listed in your onboarding materials?" The answer would be right here, in the version they scrubbed. After that, I went silent. Didn't follow up. Didn't Slack anyone. When the final rehearsal calendar dropped and I saw my name had been quietly moved from presenter, risk and compliance to observer, optional, I didn't say a word. I clicked yes on the RSVP, then printed out the matrix one last time. Slipped it into a file folder labeled lunch menu. That red square had a job once, to warn them. Now it had another, to witness. My private logs weren't flashy. No cloud sync. No backup drives. No auto-formatting AI trying to be helpful. Just raw data in a local.ods file, lines and cells like bricks in a bunker. I didn't need a reminder about what red square 14D meant. I built the damn thing. But when you've been ignored this long, you learn to track things like a ghost hunter. Everything dated. Cross-referenced. labeled for when someone eventually comes asking. Red square 14D wasn't for show. It was the only internal visual tag tied to a clause most people didn't even know existed. Tucked deep in Appendix G of our vendor onboarding docs. Federal Integration Agreement. Update date, October 12th. Page 197. Paragraph 3.3. Subpoint, Delta 14. The language. Classic legal sludge. Failure to document and acknowledge risk code Delta 14 within the vendor's stated rollout timeline constitutes a breach under Article 8 and will result in a $750,000 fine and mandatory third-party audit within 30 calendar days. Sounds dry, but here's the translation. If we launch without flagging that clause, we pay $750,000 and get a full-scale compliance colonoscopy. Fun stuff. The clause came through in a late-night addendum from the vendor's legal team. 2:07 a.m. delivery time. Buried beneath Monday's avalanche of KPIs. Unless, of course, you're the kind of person who watches. I saw it, logged it, and baked a failsafe into the matrix. 1 square. 1 tooltip. 1 line. Clause D14 Timeline-Dependent Risk Window. CSLA page 197. No blinking lights. No push alerts. Just a red square. Quiet. And when Talia, heels clicking, smile gleaming, stood there and dismissed it as scaremongering, something deep in my gut shifted. Not rage. Not even frustration. Just recognition. I'd seen her kind before. The exec who thinks caution equals weakness. Who believes that energy is the same as direction. And that if you talk fast enough, loud enough, you can outrun liability. She was the kind of exec who skimmed contracts, saw a clause she didn't get, and dismissed it as technical noise or doom energy. What she didn't see was that the matrix wasn't some optional graphic. It was a map. And now she'd wiped out the only version anyone could actually follow. So I dug deeper. In the same folder where I'd saved the original pitch, I created a new file. Delta 14 line by line, I logged every reference to that clause. Emails, timestamps, change approvals, even the internal Slack message where I posted a gentle reminder to update the integration checklist. Talia had responded with a thumbs-up emoji. That emoji? Now it was evidence. But here's the real kicker. Deleting the matrix didn't just nuke the red square. It erased the only documented trace of our SLA acknowledgement trail. No backup copy. No other slide. No fallback note. Gone. And in its place, a shiny new slide that read, 0 critical compliance risks at launch. 0. As if the clause never existed. As if the risk had been scrubbed out of reality. I stared at that sentence for a long time. 0 critical risks. That wasn't confidence. That was a lie dressed in sequins. And I don't do sequins. They deleted the red square. But I hadn't. The room smelled like burnt espresso and panic, with a splash of overpriced perfume. Final pitch rehearsal. Main conference room. The big one with frosted windows like a fancy illusion trying to hide nerves. They'd rearranged the chairs in a neat little circle. Some kind of TED Talk fantasy setup, complete with snack platters nobody touched and glossy handouts nobody read. I took my spot in the back row. Optional attendee. Risk advisory, passive role. Same blazer as always. Hair pulled back. Notebook open. Pen uncapped. Not that anyone noticed. By now I was background noise. Furniture. Exactly how Talia wanted it. She strode to the front with all the energy of a woman selling luxury skincare. Not pitching a $42 million federal systems integration. All right, team, she beamed. Let's keep it light, fast, confident. We're not here to confuse, we're here to shine. I knew what slide she was skipping before her finger even hit the clicker. Vision. Momentum. Integration velocity. Slide after slide flashed by, stacked with buzzwords and motion graphics. No substance. Just sizzle. The detailed timeline? Gone. Replaced with one sleek animated bar. Launch ready 90 days. She even threw in a joke. And unlike most risk decks we promise, no scary matrices today. Laughter. Nods. A few smirks. One of the investors muttered, "Thank God." Under his breath. I marked the timestamp. 9:46 a.m. Then I wrote in my notebook. Risk section absent. Presenter states 0 blockers. Clause D14 omitted. My pen stayed steady. My breath stayed slow. But I felt a pressure crawling up my neck like someone was tightening a bolt. Next slide, more polished fluff. Cross-platform compatibility. A growth curve so steep it looked like it belonged on a startup poster. I watched the animated dotted line float across the screen like it had never even heard of the federal onboarding deadline buried in 10-point legalese on page 197. No red square. No matrix. No mention of clause 14. Just velocity. Talia wrapped up her section with a little showmanship. We're confident, we're lean, and we're ready to move. Our compliance record is spotless. Spotless. I wrote that down too. They didn't notice the lie, not yet. But it was there. Sitting on the screen like a landmine under a ballroom floor. The investor team started flipping through their packets, preparing questions. One of them, older guy, thick glasses, hadn't spoken all morning, paused. He squinted at a footnote on page 6. His pen hovered. But he didn't write. He didn't write. Just paused. Talia kept moving, her voice hitting those polished beats. But I was already watching the clock. And watching him. Because the questions don't always show up the moment you tell the lie. They show up when someone realizes you've been rehearsing it. Over. And over. It didn't come loud. No drama. No raised voice. Just a quiet surgical line of pressure. We're not seeing acknowledgement of checkpoint Delta 14, said the man with the glasses. David H. Smith. Regulatory Oversight, Fairbridge Ventures. I remembered the name from the sign-in table. His voice was calm, neutral, but it cut through the air like a cable snapping in fog. Talia blinked. I'm sorry, what was that? David glanced up from the printout, pen tapping a corner of the page. Clause Delta 14, he repeated. Standard and federal onboarding protocols for hybrid vendor systems. We've seen it in other portfolios. That got attention. Another investor leaned in. Pages flipped. Someone pulled out a tablet. The hum started. Talia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Oh, I believe that was resolved, she said, light and breezy. Probably from an earlier draft. We've modernized our timeline substantially. Modernized. That was her word for buried. I didn't flinch. Didn't speak. Just opened my inbox. Searched. Delta 14 original. Dragged the two files into a fresh email. No subject, no greeting. One was the matrix red square intact. The other, the clause reference from the vendor SLA, with the page and subpoint noted. Addressed to David H. Smith. Blind copied legal. Clicked send. Then went right back to jotting notes like I hadn't just tossed a live charge into the middle of a $42 million meeting. Talia kept talking. Buzzwords like proactive governance, scalable safeguards, slipping out with less shine now. Her voice had a faint tremor. She could feel it. David opened the email. I saw his head shift forward, squinting slightly as he zoomed in. I knew the exact moment his eyes hit square 14D because he stopped blinking. His scroll froze. Then he opened the second file. I didn't have to look at his screen. I already knew what it said. Clause Delta 14. Timeline-dependent onboarding risk. Acknowledgement required pre-launch. $750,000 penalty. Audit trigger. Automatic upon breach. He said nothing. Didn't need to. He reached into his bag, pulled out a slim blue folder, and scribbled a note on the inside tab. That was it. That's when I knew. Talia turned toward him. If there's a concern, I'm happy to clarify. He held up one finger. Didn't even look at her. Just the universal sign for not now. Someone near the back whispered. Did she say that was resolved? A junior associate cracked open a laptop, started typing hard. The CEO shifted. The CTO cleared his throat and asked, Do we want to take a quick break? No one moved. I didn't either. No smile. No satisfaction dance. Just a steady calm. Because when the truth finally lands, it doesn't need noise. It just needs weight. And the red square had plenty. The room had gone still. Like someone had vacuumed out all the air the second David passed his tablet forward. Right into the hands of Kenneth Doyle. Founding partner. Old school finance. The kind of man who could kill a deal with one raised eyebrow. Montana Ranch, steel eyes, zero patience. If he asked to see something, you didn't say no. You canceled meetings. You hoped it wasn't your roadmap on that screen. He took the tablet without a word. Talia hesitated just a flicker but recovered fast. COO instincts. Media training. Smile at the uncertainty. And she did. A smile so practiced it almost covered the panic. Of course. We'd be happy to walk through the full onboarding flow, Talia said, gesturing toward the CTO like she was inviting him to juggle flaming swords. Dev, the CTO, fumbled for the laptop parked at the end of the table. He opened the scrubbed-down version of the pitch and pulled up the newly sanitized rollout plan. On screen, animated arrows swept across 3 neat phases. Soft gradients. A big, shiny button that read, "Compliant by design." Kenneth didn't look up. He was still tapping through the files on his tablet. "Show me the compliance checkpoint map," he said. Dev glanced helplessly at Talia. We simplified that version for clarity. It's built into the animation." Kenneth didn't repeat himself. He just looked. Talia stepped forward, voice firmer now. "Kenneth, we adjusted the flow to improve readability for investors. The earlier technical overlays, particularly the risk matrix, caused confusion. We felt they disrupted the momentum." Kenneth stared at her, expression flat. "And did you remove checkpoint Delta 14 before or after acknowledging its penalty clause?" She blinked. "Once. Twice." "I'm sorry, what?" He turned the tablet toward the room. There it was. My matrix. The real one. Not the version rinsed in marketing gloss. The one I had built square by square, rooted in the legal docs and SLA protocols. And right there, bold as ever. Red square. 14D. Kenneth tapped it once with a thick finger. "This exists in the original draft," he said. "And it's missing from this version." The silence was thick. David, the auditor, finally spoke. "Clause Delta 14 requires pre-launch acknowledgement to prevent triggering an automatic audit and penalty. Based on this deck, it appears the clause is no longer addressed." Talia didn't flinch, but her grip on the chair went white-knuckled. "We believed it was legacy," she said, her voice brittle. "It had been marked as resolved." "It's time-stamped last month," Kenneth cut in. "That's not legacy. That's active." Across the room, the CTO's face drained. An engineer mouthed something under his breath. A phone buzzed. Stopped. Even the intern in the corner stopped pretending to type. Kenneth leaned in, fingers steepled, voice low and sharp as a blade. "Someone explained to me how a federal penalty clause disappeared from your compliance plan without a single red flag being raised." Talia didn't move. He set the tablet down like it was a verdict. And maybe it was. "More importantly," he added, his eyes locked onto hers, "who told her not to speak up about that box?" It wasn't a question. It was a loaded accusation with a countdown. "Where's your acknowledgement of risk code Delta 14? Kenneth's words didn't echo. They just landed flat, heavy, final. Like a monitor flatlining in a hospital room. No yelling. No chaos. Just the sharp crack of everything falling apart. Talia smiled. A thin, hollow smile. "I believe that was in an older version of the flow," she said, scanning the screen, "then the CTO, then me, anywhere but Kenneth. We had multiple drafts in circulation. Possibly some versioning overlap. I'd have to check with our systems lead, but I believe that risk was..." "Was what?" Kenneth asked. "Calm. Cold. Resolved? Reviewed? Or just deleted?" She swallowed. "It was flagged as non-material during the final revisions." David's pen tapped once. "By whom?" There it was. The fracture. The crack. Talia's eyes jumped to me. Fast, nervous, sharp like a wire snapping loose. I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Didn't move the pen resting in my notebook. If she wanted to pull me into her mess, she'd have to say my name out loud. She nearly choked on it, trying to form the words that would admit the silence hadn't been mine. It had been assigned. I was told the matrix was confusing," she stammered. "We streamlined the visuals based on board feedback. The risk overlay was considered." Kenneth didn't flinch. "Who made that decision?" Her throat jumped. The pause that followed was thick. Not with guilt. With consequence. Finally. "It was a consensus edit. We needed the deck to be investor-ready. The compliance overlays were heavy, and we assumed the clause was irrelevant due to timeline changes." "No assumptions," Kenneth cut in. "Flat. Icy. Not with federal onboarding triggers." The CTO was already scrambling. His hands flew across the keyboard, killing the animated rollout. The slick visuals vanished, replaced by a blank black screen. At the end of the room, one of the legal team, gray suit, red tie, always silent until now, stood up, phone already pressed to his ear. He didn't look at anyone. Didn't say a word. Just left. Kenneth leaned back in his chair just slightly, like the air pressure dropped right before thunder. Then he asked it again. Who told her to stay quiet on that box? He never turned my way, but every other eye in the room did. Talia froze. A VP murmured something to their assistant. The intern shut their laptop and stared like the glass had cracked. David, the auditor, quietly closed his folder with a soft thwop that cut louder than any voice in the last 20 minutes. I didn't speak. Didn't nod. Just sat still while the room pivoted. No victory lap. No smile. Just the heat of attention changing targets. The unraveling had started. The myth that silence means agreement. That deleting something means you're safe. That shiny slides beat paper trails. Talia tried again, her voice grasping. I didn't know she'd flagged it in the master version. I thought she'd. No, Kenneth said, slicing through it. You assumed. And you silenced. Someone near operations quietly slipped into the hallway. A phone rang. The room didn't fall apart. It fell inward. Into a state worse than chaos. Accountability. And in that breathless vacuum I exhaled. Just once. Quiet. The red box hadn't screamed. Hadn't begged. Hadn't blinked. But now, finally, everyone was listening. 2 weeks later, the audit report landed like a silent blade. No warning. No announcement. Just a shared folder renamed. Compliance findings. Immediate review. 10 pages. Mostly dry. Except page 6. Page 6 was the kill shot. Clause Delta 14 was removed from investor-facing materials on October 17 at 3:41 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Internal metadata confirms Risk Officer Callie Lynn flagged the clause in version 7.4 with the red priority tag. Deletion was executed via C-Suite login without revision acknowledgement. No override requests filed. Clause was active under the vendor SLA dated October 12. I didn't smile. Didn't print it. Didn't forward it to anyone. I just closed the file, opened my local compliance mirror and logged the finding. Tag validated. Status. Clause survived. Then I created a new folder. Forward Risk Mapping Program B. And I started again. As for the $750,000 penalty, we dodged it. Barely. Because my email, quiet, unemotional, reached the side auditor 32 minutes before the final deck was uploaded to the investor portal. 32 minutes. That's what stood between a lie in motion and a truth still breathing. That timestamp? It became the firewall. The dotted line between financial disaster and plausible deniability. Legal never sent a thank you. Neither did the board. But the silence that followed felt different this time. Not careless. Not dismissive. Intentional. Heavy. Talia? She was moved to external transition. No announcement. No goodbye post. No cake. Her profile disappeared from the leadership page before the Halloween decorations did. Word got around that her contract wasn't renewed. HR called it restructuring. The rest of us? We just called it gravity. As for me, no applause. No company-wide email. No surprise promotion with confetti. Just a quiet meeting with the head of compliance strategy. She said they were launching a forward risk initiative as part of the expansion program. Said they needed someone who stayed steady when the pressure hits. Someone who didn't flinch. It wasn't a raise, but it came with a bigger map. More layers. More red squares. Nobody used the word demotion. Nobody dared say reward. Either. Just movement. I said yes. Same blazer. New room. Less sparkle. More risk. On my first day in that new seat, someone slid a sticky note across my desk. Yellow paper. No name. Just thick black Sharpie in block letters. Keep drawing scary art. I didn't laugh. Just smoothed the paper flat and stuck it next to my monitor. Red squares don't need applause. They just need to be seen.